All right, now I know how to really get it started. Who's here from Bronx? Brooklyn! All right. Hey, Queens? Where's Queens? I'll give Queens. Yeah, there we go. We have a few. I can't even claim that one borough because I live in Connecticut. So, we can sort of claim Westchester, the Bronx, but that really doesn't.
New Haven.
New Haven. See, okay. I underestimated my Connecticut people, clearly. Thank you guys so much for coming out. This has been an amazing partnership with Caribbeans in Tech and Entrepreneurship. I have been a part of the organization for about 3 to 4 years now. Georgie started it, the person that started CITE Collective, is not here today, but she does have a message which I will play for you guys in a moment. But as I said, it's been an amazing partnership with VP Records that we put together this amazing event just to talk about digital trends in music specifically. So Aaron, will you come up and say a few words on behalf of VP? I know everybody knows, but I know there are a lot of things that you guys are working on, and I know you want to share a little bit.
Thank you, Michaela. I was not expecting to speak this evening, but I'm happy that everyone made it out. Welcome. VP is very proud and happy to be a part of this. Representing Caribbean music and the diaspora and worldwide, that's what we're about. That's our mission. Finding the trends and the new music and being a part of what's developing, that's what we want to be. And so we're eager to be here with you guys and hear what your thoughts are about the evening and where this music is going. So thank you for coming out and enjoying the evening.
Thank you. Let's give it up, let's give it up. So I am your lovely host, Michaela. I know you guys got a great intro. I also run the blog, Style and Vibes. I clearly don't need this microphone because I'm loud. My mother often says so very much. Thanks, Mom. I owe it to you. But we have a great panel for you guys of such a huge amount of knowledge that is going to be on this panel today. So I'm not even going to stand in the way. But I wanted to kind of get the panel up here first and then play the word from Georgie. We can start with Carter Van Pelt, who is the director of catalog at VP Records. We also have Ravi Ramkeesoon, who is the CEO and founder of FindMyFans.co. It's a digital music app connecting artists directly with their fans globally. We have Miss Ronnie Tomlison, publicist and CEO of Media PR. She is a publicist to many Caribbean stars, including the one who is coming out December, along with Mavado, Jamil, and a few others in this industry. Last but not least, Sean Lynch. Hey, come on out here. So Sean has recently moved on from Fila North America, and he is now at JSSI. Sorry, I'm being a bad host. JSSI. So they are a fashion mogul company that owns a wide variety of brands, including Lugs and a few others that you have heard of and maybe not, because they're going to be, that's why he's over there. He's going to make it a household name for you guys. So let's give it up for our panel. I do want to play a small word from Georgie. She wanted to send her welcome wishes, so let me play that.
Thank you so much for being here. I am Georgie,
Volume.
the founder of Caribbean Tech Collective, or what we call CITE.
Can you turn it up for me?
When I started CITE Collective, I had to remember.
No, they can still hear it.
Thank you so much for being here. I am Georgie, the founder of Caribbean Tech Collective, or what we call CITE. 4 years ago, when I started CITE Collective, this was exactly what I did. Events, partnerships, and exposure for creators, innovators, and techies from the Caribbean diaspora. I wanted them to come together and learn, build community, share experiences, and engage with one another. And that's exactly what you're doing here tonight. I want to say a big thank you to Style and Vibes and VP Records for partnering with us to put on the Digital Trends in Music event that you are at tonight. We have a very exciting evening ahead. Sadly, I won't be able to join you in person, but I will be joining via the live stream. I wanted to say again, Thank you to everyone who's come out tonight to participate in the event, and welcome to the CITE Collective. You can learn more about and become an official member of our collective by visiting CITEcollective.com. That's CITE collective.com. Thank you again and have a great night.
All right. And clearly you can see what my YouTube is filled with Fortnite and horrible videos. Literally my kid takes over. Maybe disconnect that so you guys can see. All right, so I'm actually going to hand the microphone to you guys because I don't need this microphone.
Here you go. All right, so we're going to start off with just the landscape. I think when we talk about music and digital, the only thing we can really start with is analytics. So Ravi has built an amazing app. So talk to me about just getting into the music industry from an analytical standpoint, and why do you think that that's the cornerstone of where we're going from an innovation standpoint?
Okay, so first I want to say is, if you're a really good artist, you're going to be popular. And if you're really bad, well, you can always learn and do well. So analytics isn't the be-all and end-all. But we do think within this modern digital age of music, where data is so abundant, that it is now a significant part of the formula. Making a song is not enough. You can make any product and not find your market, and you won't do very well. So once a song is made, that's the creative part of the process. Now there's the business and marketing side of the process, which has to happen as well. So I think I think it has to be stated that it's a significant part of the formula for success, because one of the things that led us down this path was when we started manually analyzing data for artists big and small. A lot of interesting things started happening. We didn't know why, which was we were really interested in visualization, right? Like, where are you being played? That seems to be really important. Like, that was the first question I asked. It's like, are you being played? You know? And where are you being played that you totally weren't expecting to be played? And when we saw that every artist that we looked at had, I always, small artists in Queens that we were dealing with, she had a significant fan base in Dubai, Egypt, Mumbai. Mumbai money spends, and that becomes a differentiator for her and her peers, and also introduces new markets for her to target. And ultimately it makes for better decision making on where you want to go on tour. And touring is really, really, really important because it's the primary revenue generator in this age. You have to be able to perform, or at least get live bookings. And our value proposition is, if you are big in Dubai or have a significant following in Dubai, venues are going to be more interested in booking you because you can prove that you have a following in their geographic area, which that's what the venues want, is people that can actually come out, and we think that's our value proposition. So we think that's essentially what we're trying to do here with analytics as a foundational piece to understanding where you are, let's not call them fans, but where your markets are, markets plural. And they can be in places where you never really thought of before, or in many places.
So I would like the rest of the panel to really expand on how analytics has really been engaging with your day-to-day on a daily basis, and how it's impacting your day-to-day. Is it positive, negative? Is it just a lot more data to kind of really decipher than it was, maybe 10, even 5 years ago? Are you expected to do more, and how?
I'm relatively new to the data side of this, and I just started working in VP about 3 or 4 months ago as director of catalog, and this is relevant to me because VP has a catalog of 25,000 masters, and we're just trying to wrap our heads around what are people listening to from the past all the way to the present, and we know that like 90% of the streams that we see are catalog, and some really classic stuff, things that you would know, some things that you wouldn't know or wouldn't expect pop up. And the geography that he's talking about is extremely important to us because we're seeing developing markets that have maybe lower penetration on the use of streaming services. So those are huge opportunities for us, and they're large populations, and they're growing, and they're going to continue to listen to more and more music, and we want to present it to them in the best way and most intelligent way possible. But it's really overwhelming, I think, but we're into it all the time. Aaron over here has given us great tools, and I think it's probably advanced drastically. I wasn't at VP 4 or 5 years ago, but I know that we know more about the music in our catalog and the new music that we're promoting more than we ever have, and we can make more intelligent decisions about what we're doing.
For me, coming from a PR standpoint, analytics, data is my best friend. Reason being, it allows me to narrow in on the markets, narrow in on certain areas, so I know now where to target for media for the artists. Another reason why it's my best friend is dealing with artists, especially I'm heavily in the Caribbean side of, with the artists and PR and so forth. And I think with artists in general, especially when you're coming from a hometown, so whether it's Brooklyn is your hometown or Kingston, Jamaica is your hometown, you want to basically run your hometown. So with analytics, it allows me now to say, listen, you know what, you're not running your hometown, but you are running this town and you're running that town. So let's do some work over here and then we come back here. So that's for me pretty much how I utilize it, and it's able to kind of direct me to make my job at least easier and also get them also on my side.
I think with analytics, it's a slippery slope in some instances. They say men lie, women lie, numbers don't. I like to play devil's advocate. I think there was Post Malone's song a couple years back, not White Iverson, the one that came after it, that went to #1, and it was because of a YouTube trick that the label had pulled. By looping a song a number of times through playlists, and there's ways that you can fudge numbers, but I think with a platform like yours, that's where the authenticity kind of will reign through. And to your point, I think that you really kind of have to use the numbers to what they're worth, and they can't only be the driving factor. I think that it's something that, like I said, needs to be top of mind, but you also have to kind of revisit it from time to time to look at it and see not only growth, but also just areas that need to be worked on. So that's really it.
So I think even when you guys are even talking about it, the first thing that kind of pops to mind is the idea of curation. When we think curation, we think playlists, tastemakers, a lot of that is already happening. How is that really kind of changing the landscape of how people are kind of getting the best of the best, and just really getting, because there's just a plethora now. So as much data, we have just as much data, we have just as many songs, and it's so much easier. The barrier to entry is slim. As long as you have a Mac, you can be an artist. So the barrier is lower. So therefore, a lot of times we rely on curators and tastemakers to kind of assist with curating some of the sounds that are happening, some of the purchase decisions that are just happening, some of the events that are kind of happening. How are you guys really utilizing those curators to kind of assist you in, not just relying on the data?
Yeah, I'll start like this. Just working with a number of artists on the side from what I do day to day, I think that I don't want to continue to be the one that plays devil advocate on the panel, but you also have to be careful how much stock you put into some of these curators and some of these playlists, because the same way that it was in the 90s for certain placements on FM radio, there's a lot of pay to play on these music curated playlists. It's not like they're finding the next big thing and putting them on. Sometimes it takes a budget, and sometimes it takes a lot of manpower from a management team to really get you onto the right playlist to make you really blow up. So I think that it's a slippery slope. We gotta just make sure that the connotation between these curated playlists and what they're providing kind of matches with expectation levels. I think that when somebody thinks that they can get into a music curated playlist, they're ready to go. It's going to be happening overnight. I think overnight stardom happens once in a blue moon, and these music curated playlists also have to be what they're worth, and that's just another opportunity for your music to be heard. Yeah, that's just my take on it.
So with curated playlists, for me, it's basically really important to know your target market. That's something that's very important because, of course, we can target it. Just get on, here's a playlist with, normally it's getting 100 million streams, but it's not necessarily your target market or your listening or your audience. So that's one thing, definitely, to do the research. It's very important. But playlists are very important nowadays. As far as even you see artists are actually, curating their own, and that's another thing that's very helpful for artists, doing as well, is to actually do your own curated playlists and so forth.
I have less to say about this, just given my perspective with data, but the question that I had to ask myself, and I'll give you the answer in a second, was, how valuable are those playlists compared to a stream where somebody's actively searching for you or your song, and how do you rank that being part of a playlist versus somebody already knowing who you are and searching for you? So that's how we try to rank it. In terms of the data, we have no way of separating those two, but in terms of if you're an artist, I think you be cautious and try not to spend money. Maybe spend that money more wisely if it is a pay-to-play scenario. There's plenty of other ways you can be spending that same amount of money. And from our perspective, we're not sure just how much value there is compared to something else.
This is such an interesting question. I mean, from the label perspective, we definitely see the impact of when our tracks go into important playlists, and we want to see that happen. But I also want to draw attention before I forget about it to this is such a new landscape, and I feel like so now we have access to whatever percentage, 80% of the recorded history of music, right? But the gatekeepers are now so concentrated and so few, and the thing that hasn't come up is the influence of the programmers, the people who actually implement what you see when you land and the positioning of everything within any streaming service. These people are incredibly influential, and they're trying to deal with an unimaginable amount of content, filtering it. And do they have the cultural competence to deal with music from the Caribbean or from African diaspora or from China or from wherever? I mean, probably not, right? I mean, even myself, I was hired by Apple a couple years ago to do some of the reggae and dancehall artist essentials, and they had a very limited budget to spend on getting some of their reggae and dancehall organized out of a big body of recorded music, and they did what they could do with me, and I don't know how many other people were consulting, but it's such a big universe of music, and when you're dealing with what's pretty much a niche area, there's less focus, and I think it's more vulnerable to the influence of very few people. It's probably more easily corrupted. I mean, I'm happy to say, working at VP, that we don't manipulate, we don't game the system, and we're really deliberate about trying to figure out how we can get the message through that we have key tracks that are relevant to playlists and get them placed. And it's a tedious and sometimes frustrating process for us, because sometimes stuff will happen instantly, and sometimes there are really obvious changes that can be made. I mean, we see playlists all the time that are, just put a big question mark by it. Like, who did this and why? And why does it have 1 million followers? And how can we help improve it, So it's an amazing and kind of a frightening environment. You change from media influencers on radio to playlist influencers, and I wish the radio DJs would realize that the ground is shifting under them, because they need to use their authority. I trust them, and I'd like to see the playlists of the radio DJs who I like, but hardly any of them do it. And so as a community, we need to encourage them to get in on that, so that will help. The more people who know this music, have lived with it, and have the authority need to be the influencers and not the insiders or the early adopters. The early adopters are they have some of them huge playlists. So the situation could be improved, and we just got to keep working on it.
So I think you kind of,
All right.
I think you kind of talked about the idea of pay for play, and now that the kind of organicness of curating anything is really kind of over. So now we get into digital marketing and what the budgets are. How does that really it's essentially a pay to play, whether it's a home screen banner on Apple Music for 10 days or, a Spotify, takeover, for, an album launch. How does that really play into your budget in terms of being able to create a budget and split it into so many different ways? Because now you have 3 times the mediums that you had before, and even from a PR standpoint, now you're kind of well, I'm so big that I don't do anything for free anymore. Where do you draw the line, and how do you kind of really develop a budget around things that are shifting so quickly?
Well, that's not as relevant to the work that I do, and Aaron should give me a larger budget for my projects so that I can do more. But I'm good at making something out of nothing sometimes, and so you really try and go for the earned media and just making things happen organically, especially with catalog stuff. That's kind of the way it's gone. But yeah, we have for new projects, and I wish Chelsea's almost better qualified. She's definitely better qualified to speak to this on how VP in particular allocates resources for digital promotion. I mean, that's a different department for me, but project managers, they deal with that, and it's an important part of every album promotion. Absolutely.
So you hit the nail right on the head, which was, we're not okay with payola, but you're going to spend all this money on marketing your music, social media, and promoting yourself as a brand. So it's really a question of resource allocation. I don't know that there's a real answer for that, other than you have to work within your own budget. What I always tell smaller artists is invest time in building your own social media platform, because those are people directly connected to you for whatever reason. Even if it's not massive, it's vital, and it's something to show, and it's people that are, for some reason or another, have decided they want to engage with you in some way, which is no small thing. But I don't really have an answer to that question. It's really a question of the artist and their budget, and what they've realized has worked. Is it really radio play? Is it social and streaming? Do they have a strategy for bookings? Because you can get as much play as you want. People aren't making that much money off of royalties, but it's really about ultimately what their strategy is to get paid to perform.
So it definitely is about, for me, it depends on who I'm speaking with, whether it's the artist or their manager. That's one. And 2, it also depends on where they are in their career or how big they are, for me to start to think about budgets and how are we going to allocate budget. I tend to look at someone who is very out there on social media. To me, an artist is always their greatest, promoter, the greatest cheerleader. So you can definitely utilize them and know if that's a big artist and he has the numbers or she has the numbers and the followers and they're very active on social media, then I'll probably shift the budget a little bit different, as opposed to someone who is just straight studio, straight talent, killing you with just good stuff, but shy away from social media, shy away from being out there and so forth. That kind of let me know exactly how I'm going to do the budget. Another thing is definitely the market that they're targeting, and where we're targeting, what cities or what countries that we're targeting. That also helps for me to say, all right, are we going to have a decent radio budget? Is radio even playing our music? Should we even do that at this point, at this stage in your career? How much groundwork have we done with this single or promotion, as far as going on the road, doing some media runs? Definitely something that's always in my budget is websites, having certain landing pages, of course, when time for album or single drop, iTunes and so forth. So 2 things, it definitely depends on where the artist is in their career, how much followers they have in order for me to decide on how that budget is going to be allocated to which, areas and so forth.
Yeah, I like what you said, where it's like where they are in their career, and I'm a huge believer in doubling down on what you're good at. And I say that to say, this past year, J Balvin became the #1 streamed artist all across the world in Spotify. Like push Drake out of that. So if you can wrap your head around how it's not very easy to push Drake out of anything these days. But he knew that his fan base and future fans of his were on Spotify, and that's where his team doubled down and made sure. Now, that's not to say that he's no slouch on Apple Music or even YouTube with 2 billion views on Miente. That's important. But I think what you need to just realize is, where is the artist in their journey of their career? What is something that they need to work on? How can you kill 2 birds with 1 stone, be mindful of budgets? And I think it can kind of be very hard to understand of how to balance a budget for Apple Music and Spotify and YouTube. That's where I say, like I just said earlier, you got to just understand what works best for you, and that's where I think that the direction needs to be. And it's tough, you can't be everywhere and anywhere, especially when you're one artist or you're a smaller management team or a smaller label. So I think that there needs to just be a balance of understanding where you are in your career, what your hope is, what's your next move, and how does this help you lead there. And yeah, that's pretty much.
Can I just add something? Yeah. So this isn't related to the question, but it's related to what you said about Spotify. So one of the things that we had to look at and realize is we are a technology company, and our app, there are certain things that need to happen on an infrastructure basis for our app to be relevant, which is the country needs to have reliable internet and Wi-Fi service. Smartphones needs to be fairly accessible, and that really adjusts the numbers. So Spotify isn't available in every single country, and the technology that makes it affordable and useful for probably everybody in this room to have a smartphone is not. It just isn't a reality in some countries, and that's something that we have to deal with as well. And in these countries, radio becomes a little bit more important. So we're just figuring out how to treat that. No solutions yet, but we know that that's a reality. But that's just one of these caveats that we always have to think about: is the technology infrastructure, and is the GDP of the country and the average salary of the people in that country, can they afford certain things? And in our case, can they afford a $1,000 iPhone with monthly payments and being able to stream all the time? And the answer in some cases is no. So that's something I think always has to be taken into consideration when you're talking about anything in digital streaming, and it's just something to keep in mind.
I mean, just by a show of hands, who has like Apple Premium Music, like that package? Who has Spotify? Who's paying for, not to have ads running on their YouTube? Like, very few of you guys probably have all of that together. So like that's where I really think that we, to your point, we need to know where your fan base is, and that's why I applaud J Balvin and his team for knowing this is the direction that we have to go. And you know what? I'm sure it helped Apple Music and it helped his YouTube. But yeah, that's the biggest thing right now. It's like, not everybody is gonna pay to have Tidal and YouTube, all this. Like, it's just not gonna happen. So I think that that's something that we really need to be mindful of moving forward.
So, I said so much, and I forgot my thought, but I'm going to come back to it. But the idea of an artist kind of coming in with a certain level of packaging, you would say. I meet people all the time, and they're like, no, that's too much for me to do. Like, I think some of the artists that are creating kind of have to level set that, the creativity is maybe this much, and the business is maybe this much. So I'm sure you guys are always having conversations, level setting about, well, what are you really prepared to do in order to get the success that you want? And a lot of times, you know, if it's happening, it better be happening on the gram. If it's not on the gram, it didn't happen. So how important is social clout when working with new brands, new artists, and how are really, it's really their fans' gateway to really engaging with them. So they're only going to be as successful as they are engaged. Do you guys kind of look at that holistically before kind of taking on projects, you know, being able to kind of share that kind of information with others? And how do you kind of, like, yeah, you're not ready yet, like, or you are ready, so this is, you know, how to take it to the next level.
Yeah, I think that any artist that doesn't have a business mindset is not going to make it. I think the days of having that artist that only wants to focus on the creative recording process, that's very far and few between, and that person better have a right-hand person that's trusted, that knows how it is. You know, I think that the everyday artist is very much like a city worker in New York. You can't just do that one job in order to make ends meet. You really have to go outside of the box, and that's why I applaud the guys like Action Bronson for releasing art prints with his, you know, White Bronco, you know, mixtape or album that just dropped, and it keeps the consumer, somebody that is investing in his Instagram and stuff, on their toes to remind them this project is coming. And I think that you know, social cloud is very good, but you know, take Travis Scott for instance. While he's releasing a project, he has a Nike, you know, project coming out and one coming out right after it. And like, these individuals can't just show up for work every day. I mean, and it's also, you know, the same people that are in this room. We can't be defined by our 9 to 5. You know, that's not just who we are. And that's the way that I think that these musicians need to think about it, particularly ones that are really trying to make an impact. It's who are you outside of just your microphone? And that's why when I was at Philo, we had this project that we called Allies. And it was like outside of your winning ways, right? Outside of the stage, outside of the recording studio, who are you? And that's, as a brand, that's where we doubled down on it. So for Logic, when we partnered with Logic in the summer of 2016, he wasn't a Grammy-nominated artist, but we saw his fan base, we saw how much influence he had on social media, and we went on tour with him and we said, look, we want you to help us launch our Snapchat page, and at the same time, we're going to show how impactful you are on social media. And then he goes and releases the 1-800 song, which is one of the most talked about social media songs, you know, ever released. You know, that was a huge conversation piece, for better and for worse. And I think, you know, as we moved on, you know, we had an artist by the name of Cody Shane who was part of Lil Yachty's crew, and women's streetwear was just blossoming. And we saw her as a cultural relevant leader in that space. And it wasn't, you know, we weren't reaching for the biggest name like many of our competitors. We took somebody that was authentic, that really matched what we were trying to do, and really helped us as a brand look at things a lot differently. And I think the more that these artists are a little bit more mindful of the business side and what they are worth from a value standpoint, what they're bringing to the table to these Nikes, like, you know, Travis Scott is, or, you know, even like somebody like Drake. You saw how much of chatter was on social where he wore a pant that looked like an Adidas pant. It was like, oh, he's leaving, you know, Nike for Adidas. Like, these individuals are the new athletes, and that's really where this cloud is coming from. They're influencing the athlete rather than the athlete now influencing them. And I think that that's where we kind of have to take what is perceived as the norm and kind of flip it on its head and do something out of the box that's going to make them stand out. So social cloud is huge, but it's got to be the right social cloud that's going to lead you to opportunities that are going to better you for who you are and really push your products.
So for me, what I look for, definitely agree that social cloud is huge. What I look for, honestly, is straight up talent. I just need to know that this is a talented individual. That's the first thing I look for. Reason being is because for me, it's all about my passion. What am I selling? So I'm coming from a PR standpoint. I need to sell, I need to speak on your behalf, and I need to believe in who you are and, you know, your music. And after that, it's then the willingness to just listen and do. So if I'm saying and trust, listen, do, and trust. So if I'm saying, here what, you're signing on, let's go, you know, you're my client and so forth, are you willing to now listen and do the things that we need to do in order to make your social media pop? social media, once again, is very important. But will you take on, certain things? I remember a couple weeks ago, I said to a client, and I got this from Swiss Beats. Now, keep in mind, my clients are mainly Caribbean based. So could you imagine me telling my client that, all right, what I need you to do is take this is basically his album. You're going to take this album and I need you to go into this big, huge park. Turn on your Instagram and you're going to let your fans know, listen, if you want this album as well as, at the time, I think it was like I said $5,000 to Jamaica. They turn on their iPhone, their Instagram, and they would see exactly what's happening. Basically, what I'm trying to do is create this frenzy. And his response was like, no, I can't do that. Not at all. Now, once showing him and explaining to him, yes, he was willing. But here are opportunities. There's always opportunities on social media. And if an artist is willing to know and listen and see these opportunities, I think it's perfect. It's great. And we can make it happen. One of the things that I think, especially for a lot of artists, is not seeing outside of the studio. Not being able to just say, okay, it's not just about the creative side of it. What about the business side? And I think a strong team is very important as well. So having a manager, not necessarily just the artist managing themselves, but having a manager who, once again, the artist trusts, and they can think of the bigger picture. Music has changed so much. The industry has changed so much. They can't just do music alone anymore. They have to think of other ways and so forth. So those are some of the things I look for. And social media, one of the things that I've said also with social media now is that and I don't know if anyone would disagree, but I strongly feel if Kim K was to drop an album tomorrow, it would go #1. So it just shows like social media is so important, but once again, then the question appears like, okay, so should an artist, do all the things or put their whole life out on social media? I mean, that's something else. But social media definitely has its importance.
Right, so a lot of what we're doing here depends on the assumption that most people, especially under 30, are really engaged with, or on some level engaged with social media, especially artists. That's kind of one of the places that we're getting data from. And one of the things that I've seen is if you're under 25, under 30 years old, social media is really a part of your day-to-day life. And a lot of people under, say, 25, that's an arbitrary number, but let's say under 25. It occurred to me that when I was growing up watching TV, and I would see these commercials, now people are scrolling through Kim Kardashian's Instagram feed, and they're seeing her advertising some product, and that becomes her commercial. So it's really interesting how social media in and of itself, especially Instagram, has become this place to push products, which is really good from an artist's point of view because it shows the value of having that large enough fan base. And some of them aren't even that big, you just need to have the right product artist fit for somebody to make you some kind of an offer. And it can be really small, hey, we'll give you some free stuff, just post it. And some people say yes to that, and why not? So we think social media clout is important, but from what we've seen is most people kind of realize that. Could they be trained more on some tactics? Absolutely. To really maximize the engagement, sure. And then just to follow up on a point you made before, you talked about the bit, and you did as well. It isn't just about the creative side; it's the business side. What I can try to tell artists all the time is I don't even call them artists anymore because they're like me. They're music entrepreneurs. My product is just different. After I'm done building my product, that's just like, okay, great. Step one. One of the great lines that I've heard is nobody buys the best product ever. They buy the best product that they've heard of. And marketing, business, PR, that's all very vital. You start a different game or part of the journey once that song is done. And to your point, a lot of people don't realize that, or they do and they just don't know what to do about it. They think a song is done, now we'll make another song, but it's just really half of the process.
That question is a little less relevant to the work I do because I deal with catalog and a lot of older artists or legacy artists, but it's really desirable when, from my perspective, when I see somebody out there who does have a good social media profile. And it's also, I'll put a different twist on it, something that maybe younger artists don't think about, but it's a management consideration as well as a legacy consideration, is what's going to happen to your social media profile after you die, and how's that going to be handled, and who do you trust with that? It's been interesting to me and kind of a relief that the biggest influencer on Instagram for Dennis Brown, we have a big Dennis Brown catalog. I hope you all know who Dennis Brown is. His daughter Marla, and she does a really good Instagram post called Original Dennis Brown, and it's just loaded with eye candy of this amazing performer during his lifetime. And when a new album comes up, she's right on board to help us out. So that's like the best case scenario. Is her profile enormous for that page? No, but she's doing it. She's doing it the right way. But I just hope artists can think, and managers can help think in long-term planning down the road about this as well, as opposed to just in the moment.
So I do have final questions, thoughts, but I'm sure we have questions from you guys that I kind of wanted to see if you guys had questions that you wanted to ask. Anybody?
Hello, how do you deal with veteran artists who are not fans of social media? They want to create and they consider it your job to get them the promotion, publicity they want. They consider it your job, the magazine's job, to post an interview. They don't have to repost it, but that's your job to promote me. And then when the numbers come back, they blame you because you didn't market them or promote them, or you didn't do something because my numbers used to be this. I hear this from people that work with veteran artists, that it's sometimes a struggle when they started before the social media age.
Having worked as the editor of the Source magazine early on in my career, I couldn't go like 5 minutes within my day of hearing, well, back when I was X, Y, and Z. I think that there's a lot of artists that just are stuck in their old ways, and like they just don't know how much the world has evolved. But then there's like some flip side conversation to that, and like somebody like Andre 3000, right? Andre 3000 is so cool. He's too cool for Instagram. But I guarantee you, if Andre 3000 walked into this room, there wouldn't be one person that would not ask him for a picture, right? So it's summer of 2015. We get a brand that comes to us and says, look, we have this great activation at Coachella. The last minute, a sponsor backed out. What can you do? I said, I can give you $2,500 in products. Does that help you at all? He goes, that works perfectly. That day, Andre 3000 showed up and said, I heard there was a feeler party. He's got a backpack on, no representation with him. My manager told me there was a feeler party. Didn't even know what was there. Showed up, got one t-shirt from Feeler, a blue t-shirt that says Feeler across it and a linear logo. He wore that t-shirt so many times that people started calling it the Andre 3000 shirt, and we saw that translate to kids wearing that shirt. Not only that, but GQ writes an article, hey Andre, is it time to start wearing Feeler again? A $2,500 investment, and you know what? I owe a lot to Andre 3000. So there's some artists that it works because there's this mystical that they're like professional wrestlers when I was younger. They never aged. You know what I mean? They're that cool, and then there's just some artists that continue to be stuck in the old ways and don't want to evolve. And you know what? When I speak to those types of artists, you have to be blunt, you have to be upfront, and when things don't work out, you have to provide an opportunity for them to see the bigger picture. And sometimes it takes a failure in order for them to make the right positive moving forward. So that's my Andre 3000 story, but I'm telling you, those are probably a very, very, very slim opportunity for an artist of his age, his caliber, that is stuck in his old ways, and he doesn't want Instagram. So.
So that mentality that you spoke about wasn't just with artists. I got into the music industry maybe like 5 or 6 years, I can't remember now, which is still relatively new because there were so many people that were telling me something similar. You know, I've been doing this 30 years ago, and one day, and I used to think I was the new guy in the room, and then one day I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, look, 30 years ago there were Walkmans and it didn't, and I realized that like the music industry had changed so much that a few years in for me talking about the data side of things, that at the time nobody was really talking about, to be honest with you, and tracking it through location intelligence. When I realized that I think I know more about this lane than, I don't care about your 30 years of experience. So it really just kind of, just to support your point, yeah, the game has changed so much, but it actually changed about 20 years ago with like Napster, and YouTube is almost 15 years old already, which is still the biggest streaming service. But the music industry, from my take on it, and it's changed over the last year or two, I think there were a lot of people stuck in that old fat and happy state somebody described it to me as. And now people are starting to realize that data is really important. When I started talking about data just a few years ago, it wasn't really something that registered, but now for sure it absolutely does. And that's just been a really, really fast shift. But what that meant for me and Find My Fans is we were talking about it first, or exceedingly early, and now we have so much of a leg up on the other people that are now starting to wrap their heads around this, that it actually, that mentality which you clearly is causing you frustration, is actually the thing that kind of put me in the position that I'm in now. So thanks. Sorry, but you know, it's
I know publicists that deal with
Oh, okay.
it. I don't deal with it. Right?
You know, I have an answer, but it's a weird answer. I'll just say it. This is kind of it's a funny story to me, and I hope I can tell it quickly. Because this happened to me. I was project manager for a great album, King Jammies Presents Dennis Brown Tracks of Life. King Jammies is the producer. He produced Under Me Slinting by Wayne Smith. I hope you guys know that track. Transitional track of moving reggae from the analog into the digital dance hall era. And he produced a lot of Dennis Brown. So this album is all collaborations, 14 out of the 15 tracks. King Jammies, we had a great weekend. He was in New York. I thought everything went super well. Great vibe. It was kind of like working with Grandpa in a positive way. He was happy. Went home happy. And then my WhatsApp lights up a week or two later, and it's Jammies, and he's like, Carter, I'm not happy with the social media profile on this project. I was like, do you even have the login credentials for your own Instagram account? Because nothing's been going on there. So I said, look, you've got an album with 14 artists. And I'm gonna send you their rank them in order of their Instagram followers. Have them help, reach out to each one of them and have them promote their own track on the album. And that's just starting to happen a little bit. But getting younger people who to like vouch for the credentials of the veterans that goes a long way. So that may be applicable to others.
Hi. So I'm an artist who also has a pretty extensive background with PR in the industry. And I'm releasing 2 EPs, and we're going to make a video for one of the songs. And I want your opinion on if you think we have a song that's really accessible, that to I think more people, that's really cool and I like it. And then another song that's like more niche, that I like more musically. It's like more what I'm about, but as the PR in my head is like, but this one's way more like accessible to everyone. And we have like a budget for it. I'm like, well, is it worth spending the money on the accessibility, or do I like go with my gut with like the song that's like truly like unique to me? And I'm just interested to hear your guys' opinions on that.
Can you define accessibility?
Well, I think one song is like, yeah, like a little more poppy, like a Leah vibey, and then the other one's like really dark and heavier. It's just like, I feel like one would be way more accessible, like massive radio play, but the other one is more, there's definitely a market for the other one, but I think it's more niche for sure. But I guess as an artist, I'd rather have like 100,000 people obsessed with me than try to like make a million people really realistic.
I'm about to lose major cool points in the room. Did anybody see what was that Lady Gaga, Brad?
No.
what was it?
A Star is Born.
A Star is Born, right? So in A Star is Born, they start making this music, and it's like, it's really like the vibe that, you know, he envisioned and she envisioned, and then, you know, she got with the label, and the label pushed her to being a very big pop star, dyeing her hair and everything, and, you know, he went to his demise, like, thinking, like, that's not the artist that she is, like, this is the artist that I remember, and I think it really comes down to you personally. Like, at the end of the day, if you had one shot of releasing a track that you wanted to be remembered by, which would that track be? You know what I mean? And really, you know, I've spent a great deal of time speaking to Pharrell at various points in my career, and he's always taught me, what is like the best foot forward for you? And there is a niche audience that can open you to a bigger audience. But also, when you release that radio-friendly single, it's very hard for you to kind of backtrack from that. You know what I mean? Like, I use Kings of Leon as a great example. They were just such a crazy indie rock band that was moving, and all of a sudden they went, you know, Sex is on Fire as a pop song, and then that was it. That's who they were. It was like, oh, they sold out. What I would say is be true to you as an artist, be true to who you would like your fan base to be heard. There's time to release that record, there's time to experiment. But yeah, just trust your gut, because at the end of the day, let's say you blow up, you gotta perform that record. Are you gonna feel comfortable standing in front of a room 1,000,000 times the size of this and performing that record? And that's what I always truly believe in. And I value artists more for that. But you know what? The good thing is, if the niche record doesn't work, yeah, nobody knows that the record didn't go anywhere. But if you come out the gate, and maybe, you know, one of the things that I've worked on artists with was sometimes they try and release the radio-friendly record at the wrong time. You know, I worked with an artist, I'll leave his name out of it. He came out, I need to release this record. Well, he released the record, and guess what? Drake dropped a project. It was either Drake's project or Beyonce dropped that album with no promotion, and guess what? Nobody gave a rat's ass about this kid's record. And you know what? And it broke him. He was like, but that was definitely the hit. That was definitely the hit. And you know what? It took him a little while, but he realized that it was just wrong time, wrong place. And like I said, that's why trust your gut, but also listen to the people around you, and know when's the right time to pull the trigger on a radio-friendly song.
I second that. Basically, I'm one for an artist is to know, like, I just had this conversation, knowing your purpose. Moving with that, moving with your gut. If we look at radio today, first of all, not many of us is even listening to radio. We like how that, you know, we like to know that we have that radio track, but what really is that radio track? You know, what is that now? Going with your gut, being able to perform, give them the passion. Your performance with that niche song, as opposed to the radio song, is going to get you so much more fans. Because they know when they step, what's your artist name? Say it again. Espejismo. Got it. When they're stepping with espejismo, it's going to be like, you know, I'm moving, I'm a fan. As, you know what I mean? As opposed to, yeah, that's that pop song. Yeah, it got me dancing, it got me grooving. But there's just so much more heart and passion with this. So I definitely say, yeah, that's the one that you go with. Anybody else? You saying go with?
Yeah, I'm gonna third that. Yeah, and I agree with both of you. You know, Snoop Dogg had this line that I could never forget. He said, "Who could do you better than you can do you?" And it's so right. But to get back to the niche versus the radio, like what does that mean even radio? To be honest with you, there are a lot of smaller radio stations, even web radio, or it doesn't have to be like national, but you can more easily get played on those genre-based stations than you could on, say, you know, 97 or something, or Z100.
So, like, sound in general.
Sure.
I have some pretty successful friends who are touring all over the place, and they play their set, and they play a cover, and everyone freaks out. It's like, because it's more accessible, and so just like from being in the industry, or like that thing where you can pull the headline that,
You may have a little bit more work to do with pushing. You may have a little bit more work to do with pushing that niche song, but it will be all worth it.
Yeah.
It's all worth it. Once you cement yourself with that song, it's all worth it. It's just like, sailing.
I can't come up with a better way to say what they already said. You already knew the answer, though.
Yes, she did.
You know, you knew. I can sense from you that you knew the answer. So 4 people have told you that you already knew the answer.
Sometimes you just need that validation from the experts, you know?
Okay, so similar to her, I'm a creative, but I also kind of work on the digital side of things and all that fun stuff. And I feel bad when I say this to artists, but like they'll come to me with like so much talent and I'm the same way. And then I'll be like, okay, well if you have the money, like we can definitely make it happen. Like we could definitely make this a #1. We could definitely do all that kind of stuff. And I feel like social media used to be a platform where like you could just be discovered like and organically and all that stuff. But you see like Facebook and the algorithm on Instagram and all that kind of stuff, like they want you to boost your posts and ads and this and that. So what do you have to say for artists who don't have that budget? They have pure talent, pure hard work, hustle, all that stuff that they need, the look and everything, but just not money.
I think it comes down to also their ability to network. And sometimes the discovery of an artist is who they surround themselves with. And I think that sometimes an artist doesn't want to go outside their comfort zone and maybe buddy with somebody. Think about how many artists themselves have become discovered because they entered the right circle, became a songwriter, and then found the platform themselves where they ended up writing a song for Rihanna, and they have the clout enough to. People get wrapped up in budgets, and budgets can go a long way, but when you don't have a budget, it's what is your backup plan? And I mean, like think about it like you lose all the money they have on you. How are you getting home? What would you do to get home? And that's one of the points that I've kind of put in front of my artists is what would you do to get to the next level? How much are you willing to invest? And you know, it's funny. I worked with an artist that was working as a server at Buffalo Wild Wings, and he kept saying, "I gotta quit my job. I'm making it tomorrow. I gotta quit." No, because that you know check that you get every week can be reinvested in your career. And it came down to it where he had to go on tour. He had a handshake deal with the manager that he was going to go on tour, come back to work, wouldn't take 2 weeks off. Comes back within a week. I got a spot for him on MTV Rap Fix to speak to Schoolboy Q and a couple other artists along with Sway. And the manager told him, if you take off or take that hour to do this MTV thing, because he didn't believe him, that's it, you can't. And I said, now's the time to leave. Because you could always go get another server job, but you may not have the opportunity to speak to. So again, it was, how much are you going to invest? And that goes back to my point about, you know, a city worker. You can't just be a firefighter. That's why half of them are roofers and bartenders. Like, it's what are you going to do that's going to get you to survive, but also what are you going to get for the means of income that you're going to invest in yourself. And before I hand off the mic, the best thing that I've ever seen is LeBron James. I give LeBron James a ton of credit because he surrounded himself when he had the opportunity and he had the income. He surrounded himself with the best people, and he put his best friend with each one of those people. And then once he realized that each one of them understood training and chef and all that, the business side, he fired all the experts and he hired his friends. Because then his friends around him never had to ask for a handout. So when you get a little bit of buzz, of course, that entire circle is going to come around and be like, hey, I'm your cousin that you didn't see at the family reunion because I was in the, like, trust me, it's about what you do. What are you going to do? Like I said, if you lost everything, how would you get home to them? What are you going to do to get you from point A to point B? And that's why, again, people get wrapped up on budgets. That's why I'm not successful. It's not always why you're not successful. So that's what I would say is be mindful of budgets, but don't rely on them, and don't always think that every opportunity has to get you somewhere, but how is it going to get you to tomorrow? So that's my point.
We were friends.
We were friends.
No. An artist says to me, they have no budget. Honestly, my response, and I'm being honest, it's going to be rough. It is going to be rough with no budget. But we're friends again. If you have that passion and you want, and you're doing this with your heart, this is what you love, and you're willing to make those sacrifices, you're going to be just fine. The level and the time that it's going to take you to get to the top, just be realistic with yourself. and know that, okay, it's not going to be something that's going to happen maybe even in a year. But gradually, here is my scales. This is where I want to reach. So you know what? Let's use like something like SOBs. Let's say today, you know, I'm starting out, I don't have the budget, but I'm gonna keep grinding. You know what? December 2019, I'm gonna full out SOBs. If like, those are your targets, set those goals, set those, you know, missions and all of that just for yourself, for someone who has no budget, and have those satisfaction, because as an artist, it can get real disappointing. You can look at yourself and be like, why am I doing this? Like, and you can give up. And I want to say, if you are truly talented, you have the passion, don't ever give up on that dream, ever. But you have to set realistic goals for yourself so you can just pat yourself and say, you know what, I did that. Now on to the next. So that's what I would say.
I always get confused about the term having no budgets. And I assume you mean like a marketing budget after a song is done, something like that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of smaller artists or people that are grinding still. What is amazing to me is some of these people have part-time jobs, low-paying jobs, because their music career is the thing that they're clearly passionate about. That's the thing that makes them come alive. They somehow find the money to a couple $1,000s to record and, you know, to make friends, mix and master, and some of the music sounds really good. Of course, they don't have a big marketing budget at all. You know, it would be nice if everybody got $1 million to promote everything that they did, including me. So I'm looking for that. But it's just not really a reality. But what happens is when they do that over and over, people see that and they book shows and they'll get $1,000 a night, $500. So all of a sudden, their return on that song, which keeps them relevant on a month-to-month or year-to-year basis, actually does pay off. Are they going to get the big money? Maybe they will one day, but they're also building their craft. Not everybody is at the same level. Not everybody can jump out and be Michael Jackson. Some people take years and years and years to really develop, plus they're working. So some people have like a harder time at it. So this is not something to be discouraged about. It's just part of the process, I think. And I honestly think it's a great part of the process because that whittles out the people that really want it the most. This is not a secret. Like, to make it in the music, one of the first things I heard was, you know, like the people that make it, they should have made it because it's really about how much time and effort and energy are you putting into this, and are you, when you get discouraged, do you find a way to kind of be encouraged again or rekindle that passion? And sometimes somebody said it earlier, there's so few overnight successes. This is a long game, that's just what it is. So just like keep doing it. You're learning something. You're building a network with different producers and songwriters, and plenty of. You become more visible. You might not be able to see the results, but you don't know what other people are thinking or what's coming your way eventually.
Yeah, this one's a little outside my lane, but it just seems to me obvious that never stop creating should be the mantra, and never stop writing. And that's like at least, you don't need a budget to write and create and build a legacy. And from looking at it from the long term, everything a brilliant artist does is worthy of examination down the road. So you just can never stop, and you'll always get better. How many hours does it take to become an expert at something? 10,000. You know, make sure you put that in. You know.
Can I just say one other thing? One other thing I don't think we give like performing artists and singers and songwriters enough credit. It's only after I started like working closely with them that I really start seeing something that honestly I wasn't very good at. It's the idea that you can have this melody in your head or this word in your head or humming something, and you can take that and turn it into an actual product. That's something that we take for granted, but it's brilliant, even if it's your family that heard it. Not a lot of people can actually do that. Tapping on your foot and turning that in 6 weeks into an actual fully produced song, or however long it takes, I think that's something that's commendable even without a budget, and that's something to not ever take for granted, because a lot of people just can't. I can't do that. That's why I'm not out here singing. But it is something. It is like a great gift.
Kind of similar to like what you said before is basically what I've said to like my clients, where it's like find something else that you're like good at and can offer people like as compensation. Like she said she does PR. I'm sure she can like offer like PR services in exchange for whatever somebody can do for their music. Is that like a good advice, I guess?
I'll answer. That really just, when they talk about investment, that's investment of time.
Yeah.
So it's an exchange, it's a barter, right? So how much time are you going to have to exude being a publicist for someone else?
Yeah.
And could you be using that time focusing on your own craft? It's something that you kind of have to just evaluate, because you'll get disgruntled doing all this work for someone else and you're like, well, why didn't I just do this for myself? Because essentially it's the same amount of effort that you need and it's your own time. So you might end up in an unhappy situation. You could just stick it out for yourself and grind it out for yourself, because then you're going to be resentful if this person blows up due to your efforts and you can't make yourself blow up with those same efforts. But it's a matter of being able to say, but if you're okay with that, then that's okay too. So we have time for one more question. Oh, did you guys want to add to that?
Well, I just want to say, I think, every once in a while, a good artist is a good art. I wanted to produce this one song, and I really wanted this organ player, and this organ player needed to be on the song. You know what I'm saying? Like, he needed to be on the song. And so I was going to do whatever it took to get that dude on the song. You know what I mean? So it is all relevant, but you got to do what you got to do to make the best song possible. That's what I think. I don't know. You guys are the experts. But, yeah.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Okay, last. Oh, do you have a question?
What do you guys have any advice for how to grow your Instagram organically? Because I see some girls that I follow, they've got 10,000 followers or whatever, and then I look through and they're all fake. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. And I do this it takes me almost 45 minutes to make any Instagram post, because I'm part of all these forums, because they say the amount of likes you get in the first 20 minutes depends on how many people see it. So if you can get real accounts to like it, it goes from 7% of your account seeing it to 80 or whatever. That takes so long. And then I found that there's only so many forums, so the same people are, I don't know, do you guys have any advice about that, where you're not spending money necessarily?
The one thing about Instagram algorithms is they change probably quicker than the weather outside, and the information, as skewed as it might be, is out there, and I think that it takes time. Take a day out of your time to investigate what is the changes in the algorithms, what is something that works. Instagram story, huge opportunity. More people see your Instagram story than they do your post. And it's also understanding there's a great way that if you switch your account to a business account, you can find when your following is most active.
But also when you do that, it makes your reach automatically smaller. So I did that, so before I don't bother changing that because it's already there. So it gets smaller and then you have to build it again and then it gets bigger.
Right, but if you switch it just for 5 minutes, let it sit there for 24 hours, find the information.
Now,
Right.
what he was saying is that automatically they might reach smaller.
To a certain degree, but if you understand algorithms, for instance, one of the things was don't put hashtags in your comment section now, because that's going to kill how many people see your following. But if you put in the caption and you limit it to you're not putting it as singer or hip hop, nobody's going to find you. It's a dime a dozen. Nobody's sitting through the hip hop thing looking for the next big. It's about finding relevancy. It's about geo-targeting your posts. Okay. Right, but you know what? Let's say another artist or another person stumbles upon that. It's great that you're the one that's maybe a leader in that space. But like I said, with social media, understand algorithm changes, understand Instagram story, understand different things that are working, polls, figure out how you configure to manipulate certain things that are tools now. That poll is a tool now. You know what I mean? And I see Diplo does a really great, like, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek way of making fun of influencers, because what he'll do is put up a post and then take a screenshot of his entire Instagram and then be like, new post up now, and there's like all things blocking that, but that's what people do. And I think that if you can find sub-communities within Instagram, that's where you're going to see the following, because they think that, oh, this person's just like me. They'll be the ones that will sit there, so you don't have to do the manual labor of putting your link out there. And also, use platforms that are already existent, like Facebook and Twitter, and use them for their worth. Maybe there's no growth there, maybe there's no investment there, but you can send people to your page. And I think that one of the great things that I've seen is just people being more mindful of does anybody actually need to see this? And when you cut back on how much content you're putting out and put out the right content, that's where you're going to be seen. And don't worry about being too artsy, because that's not going to get people far. What I would investigate is what filters work the best, what hashtags are working the best. There's tools out there that can totally take your page from me to mom. Some people look at me and go, well, I look at your page, you only have 2,400 and something followers, right? I know 2 people unfollowed me today on my way here. I was very upset. but I control business accounts, so to me, those are my accounts. When I left Fila, I was the only person that ever posted on that account. That brand turned around and was like, but how do you speak? Like, when do we post? Like, they didn't know because I made that me. So I left that page with 1.6 million followers, and they only invested in social media, paid media, 1 year in the 5.5 years I was there. So I know that there's authenticity there. And you know what? There's ways to fudge it, but be real, be authentic, because I'm telling you, the Instagram humbling is coming. They did it with Twitter, they're going to do it with Instagram. They just haven't figured it out yet. Well, I think the Twitter one way back when was a little bit more real humbling. When Diddy realized that 4 times of the amount of his followers were fake, I'm sure that person that handles his account got called into the office. But you know what's crazy is, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too long to answer this, if Diddy just used that quarter of the real followers, that's still substantial. But everybody gets so wrapped up on, oh my God, I have to have 1 million followers to be successful. There's so many great people. I found one of the greatest influencers today, and I was so happy she only had 49,000 followers. But guess what? The right people follow her. Influence influencers, right? Influence influencers and influence consumers. That's what's going to get you further. So just be real, be authentic, stick to your gut, do what's right for you, do the research, do the homework, and that's what's going to get you far.
I can speak so much on this subject. I'm going to just go off on thoughts and maybe we'll get to a point. When tech companies decide that they want to monetize, they change their algorithms and they change it very frequently to stay ahead of the companies that start charging people $3,000 or so a month to manage one social media account. So what you were doing, you could start a company, $3,000 a month for each brand. So that's why they do it. It's very, by the way, and I know one of the persons that was working on changing the Instagram algorithm last year. And it gets really technical, and you can't, and they do that for really specific business reasons. So you can keep paying for ads and not game the system. So playing that game is very, very difficult. Your original question was, what advice do you have? How many followers do you have? 2,000. Okay, so that's significant enough. But I'm willing to believe that even at that amount, you have a lot of people that know exactly who you are. Yeah, so they exactly know you are. There's a really big difference between, and this is something that we have to be mindful of and mind my fans, is just because let me show you what a follow is on Instagram. It's this. That's what a follow is. A follow is not a fan. That's something very, very different. And and now they call it that, but there's something very, very different about it. So you should never really care about the numbers. You should care exactly and who these people are and do they know you. Because you can have 1 million followers and nobody will come out and watch you perform. And you can have 2,000, you book it in the right place. I don't.
Bigger.
Say it again.
I said, what's a good average kind of engagement ratio that you should be having?
Honestly, I don't really pay attention to those numbers in terms of engagement ratios.
It's lower than you think. It's
Yeah.
Under 2%. If you're at 7 to 10%, you're doing really good.
I don't not my bad.
Are you getting 20%? That's fantastic.
Sure.
It really is. I know that's way above average. I looked at this recently.
Yeah, so like, I mean, that's kind of, so the question is how to grow it. I don't know that you necessarily need to grow it like you want to see a 10,000 spike tomorrow. But I will say what you could do, because you can't really do a lot on the platform itself. Here's what I've done, because I guess I have as well. I've leveraged traditional media, articles, podcasts, and different forms of media, TV interviews and all that to get my name and my company out there. And that tends to translate down to social media. So we can't get caught up in social media is everything and just forget that there are tons of writers, bloggers, vloggers that are looking for something to write about. And you can easily just approach them if they're in your lane. They're going to say yes. Some of them are. It's just very easy. Hey, you wrote about this before, I do this. We need media. It's not much more complex than that. It's just a question of, are you bold enough to do it? The thing I don't like about social media as a media platform is that it's, for some reason, the chatter is so much around that it's still probably one of the smallest media outlets. You know, radio is still the biggest as a whole. You know, TV, you're not getting rid of that, and plus TV is the highest bar to entry. Social media has a 0 bar to entry. So these things also are very important and not to be discounted. And you'd be surprised who might want to write about you, especially if you drop that genre-specific song and you go to those bloggers and say, hey, you wrote about that song that sounds like this, write about me. And then you tweet about it or put it on your Instagram. That's how I would do. I think about media as not just social media, but like the different parts of where I get in where you fit it.
All right, I'll let you guys connect after. I want to leave some time, and I want to get you guys' final thought. What are you guys excited about in terms of music, digital? What do you think is coming next? And what is keeping you in this position?
Well, I think it's an amazing time to be in the music industry, and I'm thrilled to have the job that I have now. And even managing catalog, I'm more interested in new music, even at my age, than I ever have been. I mean, it's just like, it's an amazing time, and I don't know what's coming next because, I mean, I can barely manage what I've got to deal with right here, right now. But I think it's a great environment. It's exciting. There's some challenges and some dangers that we alluded to earlier. But I think overall, this is a really positive time to be involved in music and promotion of music and be a music consumer and fan.
So this is all set up for me to stay and find my fans and actually be the #1 data company in the music industry in 5 years. I think so. I mean, that's why we kind of did it, and we saw all the signs in the beginning. But just to kind of take it off me for a second, there's a lot to be done with just understanding information. I use the word data a lot, but ultimately what we're trying to do is find a smarter way for artists to make more money. And we think we can do that with just better information that's now accessible in a field that we're starting to kind of, people are trying to get into it, but we have an opportunity to invent an entire industry. And I think that's the thing that we're most excited about, because there are places around the world that I alluded to before, they're not up on data and streaming it, and just because the technology infrastructure isn't there in those countries, and that's just going to make what we do even more relevant. People always like to come to the US, but I'm telling you, there's so much money to be made overseas. You know, the point I made recently was like, we live in a place in New York that there's so many things competing for our dollars and cents, but you can go to places that their median income over the last 10 years has skyrocketed just based on what's going on in their countries. So for the first time, these people have expendable incomes. So going from here to there in those countries is massively important. They call those emerging markets. And there's so much to do that, you know, I personally think that we can be busy for 10 or 15 years just growing, and that's a really powerful thing. And that's the thing that I'm most excited about, is just seeing where we fit into this emerging industry.
So I'm excited about just not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring me. This industry is so unpredictable. For myself, it's just unpredictable. Tomorrow, I have no idea who my next client will be. I look forward to also bringing the dream for these artists, for all my clients, making it come true. That's something that I really enjoy and look forward to, just trying to, from point A, and, saying, all right, we didn't get there yet, but how are we going to get there? So those are some of the things that I look forward to. And probably doing some more panels.
It's our first panel, so
Yes,
can we give
it
it
is.
a round of applause? One of the things that excites me is that music is always in a cycle, right? And I think that we're coming out of a period that I call the ringtone era part 2 in hip hop, right? So hip hop is not my culture, I'm just a fan of it, right? But what I love is that the authenticity of somebody that is truly talented, to your point earlier, that's what's going to reign supreme soon. And I think that luckily we've had artists like a Kendrick Lamar that has been able to kind of push that through and weather the storm with us. But ringtone era part 2 is almost done. And I think that what excites me is we're going to get back to authentic, the authenticity factor leading the charge, the talent leading the charge. And my hope is that media only starts to become a tool. It doesn't have to be the end all be all. And that's what it should be used as. And I think that once artists kind of figure out that individuality is what matters, I think that that's where we're going to get bigger breakthroughs, better artists that are going to matter 50 to 100 years from now. And that's what keeps me excited. That's what I look forward to. So I'm done with ringtone era part 2.
No ringback tone? No ringback tone? All right, thank you guys so much. This was an amazing panel. Thank you, Carter, Ravi, Ronnie.